Do you enjoy this podcast but wish you had more weekly short doses of insights and nuggets? Well, if you didn't know, I recently launched an email newsletter where you can join and connect with a community of like-minded young women around the world, also on the journey of personal growth. This weekly email includes everything from mindful insights and finds, tips on living well, relationships, my personal experiences, and a lot more. Subscribe to get your weekly email newsletter. The link is directly in this podcast episode show notes, or you can head directly to my website at emilyelizabeth.blog and you can sign up from there. I'm Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What Fulfills You. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host. And for today's episode, I wanted to dive into a few questions that came up in my recent talk at Chapman University. I actually spoke at Chapman a week ago, and it was such a pleasure being able to connect with students and be able to return. This was actually my second time in person, but my third time in general speaking in front of a class and speaking for a class session. And it was actually a night class. It was like a 7 p.m. night class, but it was just such a fulfilling experience to be able to be there and speak with you guys and speak to those who are now in a position that I was once in when I was 20 and 21 and 22. And there were a lot of different questions that came up, and I'm sure that I will address other questions that I remember in future episodes. But I ended up writing some of this down because I realized that these topics have also come up from other podcast listeners. And I also think in general, it is helpful for my fellow gals who are just navigating the natural ups and downs of life, and especially as a young female. And I know that feeling. I've been there myself, and I still go through the ups and downs myself, which is why I created this podcast, which is why I am passionate about being open and vulnerable about just these experiences in life, you know? And so I want to address a question that seemed to come up the most, which was surrounding how to find like-minded friends and connect with more like-minded individuals. And this seems to come up a lot for those who are focused on being the best version of themselves and no longer want to do what everyone else is doing. So if you're in college or you recently graduated and you don't have interest in, just drinking and only going out all the time, you're probably thinking, how can I find more friends that are interested in maybe going to a workout class with me or going on a long walk? Or maybe you live in New York and you want to do a random adventure. And, maybe you're like, well, most of my friends just really only want to go out right now. Okay. I want to preface it with this because I feel like sometimes it can be discouraging as you go along the way and try to find friends that also embody and share these values with you. It is a long game. Finding friends that share and embody the values you have and the interests that you have, it is a long game. It's not going to be an overnight thing, and it's going to be something that you also have to take initiative of. If you want to find people to bring into your life and to add value in theirs, you also have to be willing to put yourself out there and take initiative. So, I mentioned this before, but a good friend of mine to this day, she lives here in New York. She messaged me on Instagram several years ago when we both lived in LA. And she messaged me on Instagram. And she found me through this book Instagram page. And basically, I think from what I remember, she was going through the followers list of the page, and she decided to just pick a name Emily. And she said she would I don't know, like DM any girl that was named Emily. And then when she came across me, I happened to be in LA and she also lived in LA, and it worked out great because she DM'd me. And because I am a big advocate for taking initiative, I also respect when people take initiative and when I actually see potential alignment. So we ended up getting coffee, and then it was a great vibe. And I think we spent, the summer hanging out and whatnot. And then a few months later, I actually moved to New York, but in that process, we got closer, and she also mentioned that she was also moving to New York. And so it worked out great. Like she moved to New York, I want to say like 5 months after I did. And so, she's someone that I feel like is the kind of friend that keeps me grounded, is always willing to do something wholesome. Like we'll go on walks together. We've also gone to like piano bars for like a little martini or wine. We've also gone to dinners. We've done random things in the city. So I really liked that, and I think it's kind of cool that she found me through like a book Instagram, because clearly then the common interest may be like we're book nerds. We like to read a lot, and she reads a lot too. So I often get inspiration from her. But even thinking back to my friend circle now, I mean, all of my very close friends, which is kind of crazy, I've known and been friends with each person for at least 4 or more years. Um, and I think it speaks levels on how long your close friendships have been. And I can also say that some of those friendships, I became closer to the person maybe 2 or 3 years in versus like the first year. And I've also had friendships in recent years where they really only lasted for 1 or 2 years. And I share that because that is just part of life. It is not something we need to take personal, and it's not something we need to feel completely disappointed about, because that is just how the nature of life. And I'll say that I've had the most success in finding like-minded friends by actually writing down what my values are. And I learned this after reading Principles by Ray Dalio. I learned to focus on what my actual principles are, how I make my decisions, which are based around my values and principles. And I looked for these values in the people that I wanted to call friends. And so it was not, I don't think it's offensive in any way if you don't feel like you connect with a certain person because maybe you don't see that they embody these values. You will come across those moments too, and it's okay to just keep your distance or, you know, not really re-engage again. That's also normal, but it is just a long haul process. And I can't emphasize enough, you guys, about, especially for my women out there, build that core circle, like of women and women and guy friends, anyone, but just especially female friends where you can really rely on these people. Like when you call them, you know that they'll pick up, or when you text them and you let them know, hey, I need a friend right now. Are you available? Do you have the capacity to be there for me at this moment? And again, I want to preface before I get into, talking about this. When I was 20 years old and I was a new student at Chapman because I transferred, I did not have any close friends at the time. I had just gotten out of a relationship, and I just transferred to a new school. So I was starting from ground zero. And I remember, like it was yesterday, I had a friend who unfortunately I don't talk to as much right now, but I'm sure if I like texted her after this recording and said, "Hey, I just mentioned you in my podcast. How are you? Let's FaceTime." She'll do it, because it just sometimes like life happens and you get like really busy. But I remember this girl, her name's Monica. She we went to dinner one day before it was like the summer before I transferred to Chapman. And I was telling her about my life where, just my Chapman, why I'm going to Chapman, all these different things. And then we started talking about the breakup that I was going through that had probably at that point happened like a month or month and a half prior to meeting. And we ended up having dinner for 5 hours. You guys, 5 hours. I'm pretty sure we went to dinner at 5 and then we left around 10 p.m., which is nuts. And all that to say, um, when I was moving out of my other apartment, and it was an apartment that I was previously living in with my ex-boyfriend, my college boyfriend, he had moved back home to where he was from in San Diego. And this friend, Monica, she and another friend of hers came over to my apartment on like the final week of, moving out, and they helped me clean and make sure every single thing of the apartment was out. This person, Monica, knew me for like, I don't know, for 2 weeks, and she showed up like that. And I remember this 7 years later. Okay, 7 years later, I'm still talking about this. That is how profound of an effect you can have on a person when you just show up in the most selfless and honest way. And all that to say, she helped me. She was just such a great friend to me at my time at Chapman, and she was a year older. So after that year, she graduated. And then of course I made new friends at the school. But where I'm going with that is that you have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to go find those people. And you also have to kind of know what you're looking for. Because then when you see it and when it happens, that light bulb moment will occur and you'll be like, okay, this is the kind of person I want to have in my life. And I want more of these type of women in my life. I remember this girl, Monica, she was actually the president of my sorority. So I was transferring into the school, and my sorority chapter was also already at Chapman. And so, I basically was having dinner with her to kind of get acclimated to the new chapter. And anyways, I remember she made sure to introduce me to other girls that I could vibe with, was very welcoming to me. And throughout that year, when I was 20 years old, I remember actually when I turned 21 that year, um, I only had two friends at my 21st birthday brunch. And I think I invited, I want to say five. And only two showed up, and then one of them had to leave before the end of brunch. And so the girl who ended up staying with me for my entire 21st brunch is still one of my best friends to this day. And again, I emphasize this story because I am being very open about a period of my life where I did not have the things that some of you are looking for. And these are also elements of life that I'm very fortunate to have now. So I went through a period of life without having those real connections and those meaningful friendships. And I was also seeking it at the time. But I also was not, I remember this very vividly. I was cognizant of not just settling for any friendship that came into my life. I was very cognizant of, hey, does this person show up for me? Does this person share similar values? Do they, at the time I just was not very interested in just going out to the bars or doing all of these things that most college kids do. And I was curious to find other women that were kind of leaning towards the same, or at least showed an interest of, yeah, I want to do something different. I want to do something maybe a little bit more wholesome, something good for me and my future. And I just kind of want to wrap that segment up around finding like-minded friends. It will take time, so be patient, right? But years from now, you'll be able to look back on how each friendship came into your life one by one and how it has added up over the years. Because I'm sitting here again, looking back on my life and remembering that friend that was at my 21st birthday, a friend that's been in my life for, um, yeah, 6 years now, right? Almost 7 years. And the other friend, Monica, who helped me clean out my apartment that I was moving out of when she knew me for 2 weeks. She showed me so much grace and warmth. I remember that 7 years later. And so it takes time, but you'll know it when you see it, especially when you are clear on the types of people and especially the types of women you want to have in your life.
Are you the type of person that enjoys self reflection, personal growth, and having purposeful conversations with like minded people? If you are, then you are going to love the new official What Fulfills You card game, which is available for pre order on the website at whatfulfillsyou.com. This is the perfect conversation starter, icebreaker game to play with friends on a night in with a few glasses of wine, big family dinners, a potential romantic partner, work retreats, and of course, much more. Oh, and I think this would definitely be a fun game for upcoming Friendsgiving and Thanksgiving events. Enjoy 10% off with the code for podcast listeners only, What Fulfills You 10 at checkout. That's What Fulfills You 10 at checkout at whatfulfillsyou.com.
Another question I received was around breakups and how to get through a tough breakup. And, I've mentioned this countless times, and so sometimes I do feel redundant. And I remember I actually felt redundant when I was giving the talk at Chapman because I was like, so many people asked me, what was the pivotal moment for you? Or how did you wanted to get into personal development? Or what made you get interested in this? And I had so many answers that were surrounding my breakup when I was 20 years old. And, it affects people differently. But for me, the context is I was dating someone for almost 2 years, and we were living together after dating for, I don't know, I think probably like 11 months. Then we started living together, which looking back, I actually don't think was a mistake at all. I think we handled it very well. And he was my favorite roommate for sure throughout my college years. But, there was still some relationship skills that needed to be developed, especially on my side. And so that was why he broke up with me. And, I think, again, it was such a benefit to me, right? Like I ended up being able to look within and reflect on, okay, how do I want to show up better in relationships? How do I want to show up differently in my life? Where am I falling short? And when I was younger, when I was 20 years old, still a little baby, I was more reactive, which is why I ended up leaning into stoicism. I was not very rational. I didn't think through things in a very clear, honest way. Like I just reacted to whatever was happening. And so these were a lot of the fundamental things I worked on. And at the time too, with a breakup, a lot of you guys, or at least I'm referencing the students at Chapman, some people ask me like just how to get through it or over it. And my answer is there's really no way going around it, because if you don't work through it now, the universe will present you with the same obstacle down the road. So you might as well just take it on now, especially if you're listening and you're in your early 20s, just take it on now. I remember seeing so many people, if they went through a breakup, they would try to numb the feeling by going to a party or going out or doing something, whatever it could be, even if it's unrelated to what I just mentioned, whatever it could be to numb the feeling of the pain. And trust me, if I had the options to, I might have, but I didn't have anyone to lean on, like truly, like friends wise. And and so just the idea of going out to do some of the things that everyone else was doing was really unappealing to me. And so what I ended up doing, I started to just focus on myself. And this was actually something my ex-boyfriend at the time, he told me, he graduated from college and then I was about to transfer to a new school and he said to me, Emily, find something for yourself to focus on again. Maybe go back to skating. Maybe, he said these words, I remember. And so that's actually what I ended up doing. I actually focused on myself. I started building out my first business, Elite Skatewear. I made a lot of progress in that. Like just in so many fronts. I made the website, I got into retail stores, like all of these things. And then I also just I think started taking care of myself better. I started working on my fitness, did a lot of walks and went to the gym a lot. I was reading a lot of different books. I think some pivotal books at that time in my life was Principles by Ray Dalio, and then also um I forget the title of the book. It's like, oh yeah, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Also a great book that I read at the time. I started listening to Tony Robbins and all these people, and I just started working on me, and I think other ways that I utilize my time during that period of pain and breakup and just not having anyone around me the way I do now, I I worked. I remember I increased my hours of working. So I was a coach, I was a figure skating coach, and I worked during the weekends. I worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I also had my other job, which was like part time tutoring, and I worked about 5 hours a week. So I filled up my hours with time where I'm investing in me, right? And mind you, to be honest, back then it was probably a form of numbing the pain because I didn't have to think about the fact that I was still sad about this breakup. At least the way I was numbing the pain, quote unquote, was doing things that were productive for me, and also got me outside of myself. When I'm on the ice coaching, I'm focused on the students that I'm teaching, the kids or whoever. I'm focused on them learning the skill. I'm focused on them enjoying the skating experience. So I'm outside of myself. And so that's something I would also advise too is if you're going through something like that right now, like those who came up to me after I spoke, you're going through a breakup or you're going through a really difficult time, find ways to get outside of yourself and do things that actually pour back into you. So, going to the gym or going to a workout class is both somewhat distracting and also pours into you. Your body's going to get better. Your mind's going to get better. Imagine you do that 3, 4 times a week, even 5 times a week, and you do that for, 6 months straight. I mean, imagine how much you're going to improve mentally and physically, right? So you can't go wrong there. One final topic that I want to touch on, and it came up a decent amount as well, is self confidence and how to build confidence in yourself and get over the fear of maybe what other people think, or get over the fear of looking like you embarrassed yourself, or get over any fear that gets in your way of doing you and being you. And I want to preface that it's easier said than done, and I also know that it's a work in progress. So similar to finding and creating a community of like-minded friends, this will take time, okay? But a few things that have worked for me, and this one, this is all coming from just raw, honest experiences. I started becoming more confident in myself when I saw my commitment to my investment in myself. So when I got to look back and observe my commitment to investing in working out at the time I was 20 or 21, 3 times a week, okay? And that's still to this day, like my commitment to go to the gym or go to Pilates or go skate or play tennis when I don't feel like it, that builds my self-confidence because I know I can rely on myself and I can show up. I also started to become more confident when I put in the work and then I actually saw results. And so, for example, like I said earlier, I started pouring into myself, and one aspect of that was building my first business when I was a junior in college. And it was already established when I was in high school. I actually did start the business pretty early on. It started on eBay when that was more of a thing. And I evolved into an e-commerce shop and then into stores. But when I did the things that scared me. So I remember I got into my first retail store in the skating world. It's called a pro shop. I got into my first one simply by literally going to the store and then bringing the skating dresses as samples. And I brought it in and I showed the owner and I said, "Hey, I think these dresses would do really well in your store." And I built confidence from doing that. So doing the thing, so I was investing in myself, investing in growing in my business, doing a scary thing I've never done before, doing something I had no idea how to do, which is getting into retail stores. I was very scrappy. And once I actually got over that hump, I was successful in that. And even if I wasn't successful in that, I think it still would have built my confidence because I knew that, oh, okay, Emily can do this. Emily can do this on her own. That really fueled my confidence in knowing that, oh, wow, okay, I have some, key results here to back myself up. Okay, so that goes into my next thing, which is when you do the reps, okay, you need the reps. You need to put in the practice. You need the reps to actually start to feel confident in yourself. Then you have to be what I call sometimes a little delusional with yourself, okay? Um, I don't know if any of you guys have ever watched the show Suits. It's one of my favorite shows of all time, but I love the two characters, Harvey Specter and Jessica Pearson, okay? They're both strong, eloquent, and sharp lawyers. And I actually used to write down the name Harvey Specter on the top of my notebook when I was doing sales calls at my corporate job. And I also would often, I think, lead sometimes with that energy, not an arrogant energy, but a energy of like, I got this, I am like the fucking shit. And there is a fine line prefacing between ego and arrogance, and everyone can usually tell. But speaking that to yourself and actually being like, I am the fucking shit, there's a huge difference when you put in the reps and then you start reminding yourself, oh, like I am this, right? And you can actually feel that. And again, I want to reiterate many, many times, there is a fine line between utilizing this for your own confidence and also how this can toy and border with arrogance. And for me personally, in my own experiences, when I remind myself of that, it has helped me so much in not caring what other people think because I never valued then their opinion more than my own. Because if I thought of myself highly and I regarded myself in a high way, um, I wouldn't allow other people's opinions to get to me. And I think something that did help with that too was reading the book Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, because that really reframed a lot of things for me. And I think sometimes as well, um, we think that other people are paying attention to us. We think that other people are actually judging us. And the reality is, no one is paying attention to you as much as you are paying attention to yourself. Okay. We're actually a little bit more self absorbed than we think. So that's something to keep in mind. But one last aspect of self confidence that I've found to be very useful, and again, a practice that I use in my own life, which is exposing the things that you are fearful about or you're insecure about, right? So, for example, I used to have some pretty mild to severe, I don't know about severe, but I'd say like mild slash moderate acne in my 20s. And now I definitely still have like marks here and there, but I think skin used to be probably an insecurity for me, especially in my early 20s. And I think over the years, as I did the reps, right? Like I said earlier, build the reps, you got to put in the practice. As I added more reps into my life, I started to just expose the things that I might be thinking about. I might literally just go up to a friend and be like, "Oh gosh, like I had to put like a little pimple patch on my pimple." And like instantly I'm exposing that. I'm instantly exposing the thing that someone could comment about. Like, "Oh, like look at the pimple on her forehead." I don't know. I'm just making this up. But you see, the reality is, if any of you guys have watched the movie 8 Mile, where Eminem in his final rap battle, I was a big fan of Eminem growing up as a rapper. He literally destroys his opponent in the rap battle because he exposes everything you could say about him. And so, therefore, the other guy in the rap battle, he has nothing to say anymore. He has nothing to say because Eminem has acknowledged and owned up to every single thing you could say about him. And I think that's something I think about too is we are not confident when we feel insecure about something. We are going to constantly feel insecure about something, okay? Whether it be physically or a mental aspect or whatever. We all have different insecurities. And one of the ways to get over and move past that insecurity is simply to expose it, to simply put it out there and acknowledge it. Because the more you try to hide something about yourself, the more insecure you will feel. And that's a personal experience for me that I've come to learn is that this is something that's also quite against or the opposite of the culture that my parents are from, which they're from Vietnam. And from my understanding in Vietnamese culture, and maybe a lot of Asian culture for a matter of fact, being open and transparent about who you are and what you're not great at, and also what you are good at, that's really taboo. And I decided to go the opposite way, which is I am comfortable acknowledging that, I don't know, that I have a pimple on my chin today, or that, I don't know, my physique is not as toned as it usually is, or like, I don't know, that my hair is not looking on point today, or that I don't know, I'm just like making random things up, but like we all have so many different things that we are insecure about. And it's the irony is that the less we hide it and the less we try to run from it, the more comfortable and confident we will feel about ourselves. You know what I mean? And so, whatever it is that you're scared about or you're afraid about acknowledging, you got to first own it. Accept that thing about yourself, right? Like, I have to accept that I am 5'6" and I'm not 5'10", and it's harder for me to be a runway model. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm 5'6". Amazing. It is what it is. I love that. And that's okay. Like it might be weird. And again, it's funny because now I'm just laughing because I'm like, I can't believe I'm talking about this on a podcast. But you guys, this is the shit that I wish I heard other people, especially women that were like 5, 10 years older than me. I wish I heard them just like own the reality of some of these things because sometimes we are just presenting this PR image of ourselves. And I really wanted to see someone own up to the fact that they like to have a good time, but they also like to work hard and they do wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. and then they do get their workout in, but they do get a martini, on a Thursday night with their girlfriend. Like, own that, we're not one-dimensional human beings, you guys. We all have different interests and needs and desires, and that's okay. But the sooner you figure out what that is and then you accept that for what it is, trust me, you will start to feel more and more confident in yourself. Remember, it's not an overnight result, and it's also something you have to continuously do day by day. Just like the gym, you don't go once or twice. You have to go day after day, get little repetitions in order to see how built and toned you are 6 months later and then 1 year later, because that's where the results are shown. The actions and habits are done day by day, but you really see the results after a long period of time. And of course, they compound over time. So the sooner you start, the sooner you're going to get the results, and the longer you'll see the profound effect. All right, that was all for today's episode. I hope this was helpful, insightful, and as always, if you enjoy this topic or these topics I've been talking about, or if you like these solo episodes, please be sure to let me know and DM me on Instagram at Emily E. Duong or at What Fulfills You. When you let me know what episodes you like, it helps me make sure that I can cater future episodes to the things that you guys like, and I can make sure I can also touch more on the topics that are helpful. So thank you again for being a listener, and make sure you share this with a friend, because who knows, maybe this episode or the podcast in itself will be helpful for them on their journey. So be a good friend. And that is all for today. I will chat with you all in the next one.